Welcome to SpanReads, not your typical rereads podcast, a 17 shard series where we reread the Cosmere and are giant nerds about it. Today, we are talking about the Cosmere in context of Rhythm of War. Joining me is Joshua.
Hi, some people called me Jofwu.
And Benjamin.
Some people, oh my God. Some people call me OJ.
Oh, God. Okay. We're getting a bit loopy. I'm Ian. I'm sometimes known as Weiry Writer. Sometimes I'm known as Voice Hadriel. Go check out Dice Porn. This episode will have spoilers for the entire Cosmere, which, as of release, the most recent Cosmere episode or Cosmere book is The Sunlit Man. I'm 90% sure.
That was right.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
Okay.
Is there one more? Is there one more? No, it's not.
So, the Cosmere. It's a recurring section on SpanReads for Stormlight book. There's a letter. And this one is from Harmony. We've had one from Harmony before, but this is a bit of a longer one. And we learned the names of a full quarter of Adenalsium.
Yeah. It was wild. He just kept going.
Mercy, Invention, Valor, and Whimsy.
I think it's like, wasn't it the first one like names two of them? You're like, man, that's crazy. And then you read the next one and like names like another two, and you're like,
no, it's like the first one only names one.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, like great, we've
got our one this book.
We got our one for this book, and then three more happen. It's like, what? What? And they're interesting too.
Yep.
Like in context of all the others, like it's interesting. So at this point, this what got us to knowing 14 of the shards. And I was like, and and now we know 15, and we're just like raring to learn that 16th and start playing with categorization.
Yeah.
Because we're humans, we categorize things. Talking about the surges from last episode.
Yeah. We like to bundle things together.
But the other thing I like about this letter is Harmony's talking about making a sword to act on his behalf when he cannot. Yeah, that's Wax.
Yeah. Good old Waxillium Lefian.
The sword himself. Well, not so much anymore.
Yeah.
He tried.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this was a great letter. Just because we learned so much. Like we didn't just learn their names, we kind of learned a little bit about each of them as well. It wasn't just like maybe you should reach out to Mercy. It was like,
this does date the letters more so than we've known previously, right? Like knowing, especially with the lost metal out and like clarifying that the sword is about Wax. It suggests that that is referring to Wax, and that it was then written sometime not long, like within a couple of decades, right?
Yeah.
Like while Wax is sort of coming into that role within that time frame of Era 2, right? So it's not long before Era 2 happens. Presumably the rest of the letters are like not, centuries. It's not like a time span of centuries, right? So it means the letters are happening probably like within the context of the stories that are happening so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're very clearly written whilst in these first 5 books, and then we're getting responses within these first 5 books. And I think this was the one where it's like, depending on how Era 2 and Stormlight end up being, compared to each other in the timeline. No, if we're working under the assumption that Era 2 is happening between 5 and 6, this is a letter that's actually written after the book that it's in. And so...
Well, not necessarily. Because, it's before Era 2 starts.
Yeah, it could be that he's working on his sword.
He's
thinking of getting a sword, isn't he? Sorry, yeah. I have begun searching for a pathway out of this conundrum by seeking an ideal person to act on my behalf. So he's thinking of getting a sword. So, okay, so it's... Yeah, written before Era 2.
My impression is like while Wax is in the roughs, like that's kind of Harmony's. Yeah. He's got Bleeder kind of following him around, kind of preparing him for whatever he thinks is going to be next. I don't know. That's kind of what I imagine it
we've already talked about Teravangian becoming odium, but a vessel changing, always significant in the Cosmere.
Yeah, because I think we've got Caesar taking up Ruin and Preservation, and Taravangian taking on Odium. And I believe, do we have Wobbs that's the only, like, all the other shards are held by the original owners as long as they're not dead? Because I think that's the case, right? Everything else?
That's possible. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either.
But we do know that it's exceptionally uncommon.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh yeah, all of them have been replaced at this point. It's like, it's a strict minority. So obviously Teravangian becoming odium, what does that mean for like the war for the greater Cosmere that's been kind of getting discussed out there? Because obviously
stuff was mentioned in this book the first time.
Was it? Okay. I couldn't remember if it was mentioned in Oathbringer. Teravangian is going along with Race's plan. It's like, just very excited and interested to see progress on this front.
It's because you kind of think, why is there going to be a war, right? Wars don't just happen for no reason. And you can imagine those first 16 vessels, they killed God and they were like, right, now we're all going to leave each other alone. And then Odium comes along and starts killing a bunch of them. And like, the war then would be like, oh, eventually we probably should deal with Odium. And then all of a sudden it becomes, hey, us people who kind of agreed to take up these incredible powers in the universe and then kind of agreed not to mess with each other with them. Yeah, those people are dying and they're being replaced with people we don't know. And we're giving these people godlike powers. And it's like, yeah, I could see why a war would be if not inevitable, but yeah, if I was one of those original vessels, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not happy with this situation changing.
Well, like, is the war between the shards? Is the war like Fane life is a thing?
Yeah. How far has that spread?
It's a good question.
We do know the Sleepless are also kind of involved in I don't know, there's something with them going on.
Oh yeah, I momentarily forgot they're not actually from Rosharan. Because we think of them as Kremlings so much. It's like, yeah, no, actually they came to Rosharan from elsewhere and changed themselves to be like Kremlings. Yeah,
but it's in Yumi. She talks about the like all the wars that she's trying to run away from. What's her face? I
know what you mean.
The Sleepless. Geez, I need to reread it. There's
Joff not remembering a Yumi thing.
Right.
Unbelievable.
I haven't read it in a while now.
And you claim that's one of your favorite books. How dare you?
Massacre. There you go.
Anyways,
name is Chidikere. I can't even say it. I was like, I could say that. Nope, can't. That's too many K's and D's. Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff. I'm really excited to see like what is Brandon doing with. He's bringing the Cosmere, like a big picture Cosmere, into Stormlight Archive with all this more so than he had at the time. In Lost Metal, we saw a lot of Cosmere stuff, but it was still it feels very like focused on the Mistborn story there to me. It's like this other shard coming to invade Scadrial. Here, there's just kind of these big mentions of the Greater War beyond Rosharan. There's mentions of all these other shards that have not been in the story at all. And I'm just curious to see like what's the plan there? Where's this story headed?
Yeah,
in
it's
that
like,
context.
because it was this book and then Lost Metal, and back-to-back years, or were there 2 years? These two were close together, and they do kind of, there is sea change in terms of how much Cosmere is in the books.
Yeah.
Which I think is another reason why some people rank this book lower, is because there's so much Cosmere stuff that like we're starting to get to the point where it's like you kind of have to read everything to put together, especially compared to The Way of Kings, which at the time had the most Cosmere stuff because it had the letter hinting at like Aona and Sky and Bovidin. But it was still so abstract. Then interesting seeing how far we've come and how forward the Cosmere is becoming in Brandon's plans. Probably in large part because that's what the fandom are really engaging with. He kept it on the download to start because he didn't know if fans would like it. Well, he's seen fans like it.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's getting more and more in. And I'm like, which like I love all of the Cosmere stuff. I love that it's in here. Having the ideal balance between Cosmere and like the individual series standing on their own.
It's a hard balance. I know exactly what you mean. I'm one of the people where it's like too much focus on wider Cosmere stuff, kind of, unless it's directly related to plot, like it is in the Lost Metal. Like just having a lecture from Vasher, you know, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a fun scene, but you know, or wait, no, it's in the Lost Metal where they start calling like raps chowder, and I'm like, come on.
Because it is chowder.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but it's also a oh my god,
it didn't have to be.
It didn't have to be. It could have been a, you know, we have like 4 different names for a rap with meat in it on Earth. I mean, probably thousands, you know, and so I'm like, and so I definitely have had experience with this as well. I managed to convince 2 of my friends to read Stormlight, who haven't read other books. Well, one of them's read Mistborn. And they both got to they both got to Oathbringer. And they were both confused by Nightblood, Azure, and like what was actually going on with them. And they like had all these theories that were going on about who they were and like, oh, are they the shards, the secret, that was kind of thing. And like one of them reacted when I told them like, oh, there's another book you can read to find that out. One of them was like, oh, that's cool. And the other one was like, oh, I have to read another book to like find that out. Okay. All right. And, you know, he was kind of deflated about it. He was like, okay, so it's got nothing to do with the story of this book. I was like, kinda. I was like, the sword will be important, you know? And so I've seen it happen of it like going both ways.
Whereas me, I'm like, there's another book I can read. Great.
the friend that was deflated, he's big into lit RPGs, and this was like the first. Oh, I almost said the first proper book, thereby implying that lit RPGs aren't real books. I wouldn't dare say that.
Good, because I have lit RPGs. Some of them are very good. As a genre as a whole, the percentages of good books to
I have not read any lit RPG. In my mind, it's like a genre where like you want things to be like more laid out and explained and sort of connected from one thing to the next. And I will like die on the hill that everything in the Cosmere so far is still very standalone, where you don't have to read other things. If you want to, you can. There's some people who, and it's a valid, I can understand the argument that like you need to read other things. I can certainly understand the argument that it is better if you read other things, but I don't think you have to. I think that there's a lot of things that people were like get stuck on. And they're like, oh, see, this will be confusing if you haven't read the backstory over here. And I just don't think that's true. I think that I've read lots of books where like there's just stuff that comes in that's not explained explicitly. And like it doesn't, like books don't always like handhold you on like where this thing came from, what this means. And I think that I still, even this book, even Lost Metal, I think that you can read it just fine. I'm curious to see if it reaches a point where I don't think that is true. But so far, I think that it is better. Is more fun if you have read all the things. But I think that if somebody just doesn't want to for some reason, like you don't have to. Yeah, it's not like the story is.
You just have to accept that, like, not everything is going to be explained in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that's like even true like within like there's some things like just pure Rosharan. It's funny when I sometimes see people like I've seen people who have not read the rest of the Cosmere but know that it's a thing. They'll be like, oh, I read this like one part, like this unmade, like it was not explained at all. This is clearly some other big Cosmere thing, and it's like, no, that's just from this book. Like there's some things I think in epic fantasy especially where like sometimes like there's just mysterious things that are not thoroughly explained. You don't know more about it other than kind of the implied context you get. You see it with the I see a lot of people start Rhythm of War and be confused by the time jump because they feel like they missed something, like they must have been like a book in the middle or something that like filled this in. Like sometimes books don't do that. Sometimes you have to kind of, they give you some pieces and you have to make sense of it.
I think the closest feeling, because obviously we read all these books, so it's hard for us to understand how it feels. But I do think sometimes it happens where I used to watch everything Marvel. All the MCU stuff. I'd watched all of it. I've watched like 2 of the TV shows, and then
did you watch WandaVision?
I watched WandaVision, and I watched Loki.
Okay. Watch Agatha All Along.
I'm watching Aether all along right now.
Okay, good.
And I can't remember which movie it was, but there was a movie where it was like but I still watch all the movies because I like movies. And so I started watching the movies, and every so often I'm like, oh, I know I'm supposed to know who this character is, and I know I'm missing out. Like this movie has not introduced this character in a way where I'm like, they've introduced them as if I should know who they are. The camera lingers on them for a second and they don't say their name. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can tell that this is a character from one of the TV shows that I should have. And it makes me just feel like, oh, okay, all right, I'll wait till their scenes are over because I don't know this character and they're not going to give me the amount of time for me to care about them. And I worry that's what happens with Cosmere stuff in the these. Yeah.
For me, half the time that happens in a Marvel movie, like it might be that, but I also think that it might be a character that was like from some early movie that I've just forgotten about, because a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, it was his buddy from the first movie that's like finally back here in the 4th movie, and I'm like, I don't remember this guy at all, but I guess
like the MCU has definitely reached a point where it's like there's so much you can't. There's so many Marvel movies I haven't seen at this point, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm going to watch the things I'm interested in, and I'm not going to watch the ones I'm not. And yeah, like I hope that's not how the Cosmere turns out. I hope I'm excited by everything. Who knows what seeing the future is of Odium, and we don't like him here. Speaking of other Cosmere stuff in this book, we get planet names. Scadrial, Nalthis, Taldane. They just get explicitly name dropped. And it's like, okay. Also, Thydekar, he's mentioned in the prologue of Way of Kings. You want to know who he is? Kelsier. He's been Kelsier all along. Go check out our
short.
Yeah, our short. Yeah. I think it's from Secret History, but yeah. Who's been messing up everything? It's been Kelsier all along.
Yeah. I will put my hand up and admit I missed the Lord of Scars thing. Didn't clock with me, went over my head. Didn't realize it was Kelsier until I spoke to someone else, and they're like, "Oh, the reveal it was Kelsier." I was like, "Oh, right, okay."
It is just kind of slicked in there, right? Like it's not. It doesn't beat you over the head with it. It's
it's like Lord of Scars sounds like an appropriately cool just title for like some sort of entity that doesn't kill you, just mutilates you, you know?
Mm-hmm. But speaking of like those Cosmere connections, Thydekar is the leader of the Ghostbloods. Like, do you need to know that he's Kelsier for that to make sense? No,
not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Shadowy leader of the shadowy organization.
But yeah, like definitely getting that reveal in this book, and then going into Lost Metal, where like the Ghostbloods are also there, but they're under Kelsier's direct control, and they're way different than like the Ghostbloods. Like they have their similarities. Like the Ghostbloods are still the Ghostbloods. It's just a healthier dynamic and not quite as take over the worldy.
Yeah. Like the ones on Rosharan are there to defend the place, and the ones on the ones on Scadrial are there to defend the place, and the ones on Rosharan are there to take things from them to help defend Scadrial.
Mhm. Speaking of Scadrian forces on Roshar, Axendwith and Gary,
Yeah,
the
Gary.
two Karis people.
Forgot about Gary. Yeah.
Gary. You call him Gary?
Yeah, he's Gary.
Gary.
That's funny.
And Axendwith, he's working for Odium?
Question mark?
Yeah.
Seems like it. It's super confusing to like detangle because he's like, she's with Gavilar in his party, but like, are they working together? It's not clear. And then she meets with Ulim in the Vinley flashback. So like, there's a lot of networking going on here.
And then like Ulim's like, they were planning to meet her, but she had to flee because Gara found her and figured out she was working with Odium or something. Interesting. Okay, like what's going on with there? Brandon, tell us more.
Yeah.
But that's also a thing where it's like her being from Scadrial isn't important to the role she plays in this book.
Just a mysterious figure with information.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she was fun. Like she doesn't really do a whole lot other than like kind of be mysterious in a really good way, right? I liked her a lot. I'm super interested in Gara and like because his allegiances are even more unclear, right? Because he seems to be really concerned about Gavilar, but was he working with Gavilar or was he
watching
for someone else watching Gavilar? Because all we'd get is he's in the prologue, concerned about Gavilar, apparently, seemingly. He thwarts Axendwith, apparently, and then Reyes kills him.
Yeah.
Yes. And he had an AVR.
And he has an AVR.
Yeah, which like, both Gara and Reyes have AVR, which I think we knew birds got off of First of the Sun before this. That like people had stumbled across the perpendicularity, it just wasn't well known.
Yeah, I don't think these characters have been to First of the Sun to get their birds. I think
no, birds have made their way out into the Cosmere through means. They're rare, but they're out there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. We didn't get a hint of what the AVR does, did we? Like what?
No.
Garrett, yeah.
On either of them, I think.
So excited for that. Hopefully, we'll find out what these birds do.
Yeah. And then the last big thing in the Ars Arcanum, there's some discussion of stone shaping in there and mentions of the Queen and the Mountains of discovering stuff. And then there's a mention of a guy named Foyle under the ocean studying Aethers.
Who could that?
Gotta love a Zysis Refliel reference.
It's really nice that Brandon came along and wrote Trust to kind of clear this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Zysis studying the Aethers.
Because he probably had written Trust by this point, by the time Rhythm of War released. Because it was during the pandemic.
Yeah, by the time it released.
He certainly at least like had it in his mind, right? Like it was, if he had not written it, it was something he was playing with.
Yeah, so that
the year of Sanderson was 2022?
2023 was when we received stuff. 2022 was when the Kickstarter was, but they were all written by the end of 2021.
And they were starting.
Tress was the first one.
Yes.
And Rhythm of War was end of 2020.
Cool.
Dragons.
We love dragons. We're here as fantasy fans to tell you that we love a good dragon. Or a bad dragon as well. Wait. An evil dragon. There you go. Or not even evil.
Speaking of dragons, almost dragons, I do love, random aside, I love the little Cheery Cheery interlude from Cheery Cheery. Just teasing along the Dawn Shard plot of Risen. Curious to see where she's going, because Dawn Shards have some Cosmere implications, so that's relevant to this episode.
There you
Didn't
go.
mention her earlier.
I will say Cherry Cherry Interlude is something I always forget about because is insane. Like
Mhm.
Cherry Cherry is talking now. Also, having beta read the book, getting that interlude before reading Dawn Shard, super even more insane.
Yes.
This is also more a magic thing I forgot about. But speaking of Cherry Cherry, the Chasm Fiends becoming friends with,
Yeah.
right,
Yes.
is interesting. And I'm going to make it Cosmere by saying if we do not get a Taldane Sandling fighting Godzilla style with a Chasm Fiend before the end of the Cosmere, then Brandon has failed us.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean that. Yes, I feel like the Thunderclast versus Chasm Fiend. I feel like that's the
That
kaiju
works.
fight we're gonna get
I can
first.
accept that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's hard to beat a Thunderclast.
Yeah. It's also hard to beat a Chasm Fiend.
The Cosmere has good megafauna, and
Yeah.
What we need is space megafauna. Gotta find those space whales for Calico.
Gotta find them space whales.
you just need to bond a star sprint with a Chasm Fiend.
Yeah. I think that brings us to the end, folks. I hope you're all ready to read Wind and Truth, which, assuming I understand what the schedule of release is, will be next week.
Oh my god, it's next week, everyone. Yeah.
Or is it this week? I don't know. Is Thanksgiving on Thursday? Or
If
was
it's
it last
week,
Thursday?
That's even more exciting.
I'm a television.
Yeah.
That's not my job. So I'm just going to thank you all for watching. You can find us at 17th Shard for all the news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want or dream about. You can find us on social media, SoundCloud. You can leave us a review on iTunes. I also think you can leave us reviews on Spotify. Maybe do that. You can subscribe on YouTube, and you can also support us on Patreon. See you next time. Bye.
We made it.
Woo!